My daughter-in-law called me a burden to my face on a Tuesday. By Thursday, my son had forged my signature on a power of attorney. By Saturday, they were measuring my bedroom for their new home office. But here's what they didn't know. The old plumber they were trying to flush out of his own house had been recording every word since Monday. And the footage was already with my lawyer. Let me back up. My name is Frank Moretti. I'm 67 years old. I built Moretti Plumbing and HVAC from a single van and a toolbox I bought at a pawn shop in 1983. 41 years later, that company employs 38 people and pulls in $9 million a year in revenue across northern New Jersey. I've got a house in Montclair worth $1.6 million, paid off since 2011. I've got $2.3 million in investments and another $680,000 sitting in the bank. Not bad for a kid from Newark who dropped out of community college because he couldn't afford the second semester. My son, Vincent, was born in 1987. Never changed a tire in his life. Never had to. I made sure of that. While I was crawling under houses in January fixing burst pipes, Vince was playing travel soccer and complaining about his allowance. I didn't mind. That was the whole point. I wanted him to have choices I never had. I put Vince through Rutgers. 4 years, $112,000. Then he got his Series 7 license and became a financial advisor at a firm in Morristown. Married a woman named Kristen in 2015. She came from money. Old Bergen County money. The kind of family that measures people by their zip code and the label on their coat. From day one, Kristen looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. My calloused hands embarrassed her. My accent, that old Newark Italian thing, made her wince at dinner parties. She once told Vince, loud enough for me to hear, that she wished his father was a doctor instead of a man who unclogged toilets for a living. I let it go. For Vince's sake, I let a lot of things go. My wife, Gloria, died in 2019. Pancreatic cancer. Took her in 4 months. After the funeral, Vince came by the house maybe twice a month, then once a month, then holidays only, then not even that. Last Thanksgiving, he texted me at 6 p.m., saying Kristen's family had invited them to the Hamptons. Merry Thanksgiving, Dad. But the house Vince suddenly cared about very much. It started on March 3rd, a Monday. Vince called and said he wanted to have dinner. Just the two of us. I was surprised. He hadn't suggested dinner in over a year. We met at a steakhouse in Montclair, the kind of place where the menu doesn't have prices. Vince ordered a $70 Wagyu. I ordered a burger. Dad, Vince said, cutting his steak with surgical precision. Kristen and I have been talking. We're worried about you. Worried how? You're alone in that big house. You're 67. What happens if you fall? What if there's a medical emergency and nobody's there? I've been alone in that house for 5 years, Vince. I'm fine. He leaned forward. Dad, be realistic. You had that dizzy spell last summer. The dizzy spell. I'd stood up too fast after kneeling in a crawl space for 2 hours. Any human being on earth would have been dizzy. I told my doctor about it. He laughed and said, drink more water. We think you should move somewhere smaller, Vince continued. Somewhere with staff. Like an assisted living community. Assisted living. I run a company with 38 employees. I drive myself to job sites 6 days a week. I bench press 185 pounds at the gym every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And my son wanted me in assisted living. And the house? I asked. Vince cleared his throat. Well, obviously, you wouldn't need it anymore. We could sell it. Put the money in a managed account for your care. A managed account. Managed by Vince, the financial advisor. I'll think about it, I said. Vince's jaw flexed. Dad, I really think we should move on this. The market's hot right now. Spring buyers are aggressive. Spring buyers. He'd already researched the market. This wasn't concern. This was a business pitch. I said, I'll think about it, Vince. He dropped it. But when I got home that night, something told me to check my security cameras. I'd installed a ring system 2 years ago after a string of break-ins in the neighborhood. 4 cameras covering every angle of the house, plus 2 inside. The footage saved to the cloud automatically. I pulled up the interior camera in the living room. 2 days earlier, Saturday afternoon, Vince and Kristen had visited while I was at the hardware store. They had a key for emergencies. On the footage, they were walking room to room. Kristen was taking photos with her phone. Vince was measuring the living room with a tape measure. "This kitchen is hopeless," Kristen said on the video. "We'd gut the whole thing. But the bones are good. 4 bedrooms. We could convert the basement into a home gym." Vince nodded. The realtor said, "We could list at $1.7 and settle around $1.6. But if we renovate first, maybe $1.9. Kristen stopped in the hallway, looking at my wall of family photos. Gloria and me, on our wedding day. Vince as a baby. My parents, in the old neighborhood. "All this old stuff has to go," she said. "It smells like mothballs and sadness in here." I watched that footage 3 times. My hands were shaking, but not from weakness, from anger. They'd already planned everything. The dinner, the concern speech, the assisted living pitch. It was all a setup. They wanted my house, and they'd rehearsed their lines like actors, but they didn't know about the cameras. And they didn't know I was about to rehearse my own lines. Wednesday, March 5th. I went to work at 6 a.m., like always. Checked on the Ridgewood renovation, signed off on the Parsippany commercial job, reviewed payroll with my office manager, Diane, who'd been with me for 22 years. Normal day. Sharp mind. No confusion. No dizzy spells. No signs of the declining old man my son was inventing. At 11 a.m., Diane came into my office looking uncomfortable. "Frank, your son called the office this morning. Before you got in, what did he want? He asked me how you've been acting lately, whether you've seemed confused or forgetful, whether you've made any strange business decisions." My stomach dropped. "What did you tell him?" "I told him you caught a $14,000 billing error last week that nobody else noticed." He didn't seem to like that answer. Vince was building a case, calling my doctor, my office, probably my friends too, gathering ammunition to paint me as incompetent. I knew what was coming next, because I'd seen it happen to my friend Lou Bianchi 3 years ago. His kids got power of attorney, sold his house in Hoboken, stuck him in a facility in Pennsylvania, and split the money. Lou died 8 months later, not from illness, from heartbreak. That wasn't going to be my story. I called my lawyer that afternoon, not some fancy firm in Manhattan. I called Ray DeLuca, 69 years old, office above a pizzeria on Bloomfield Avenue. Ray had handled my business contracts, my wife's estate, and my property matters for 19 years. He was old school, handshake deals and legal pads, but he was the sharpest attorney I'd ever met. "Frank," Ray said after I explained everything, "your son's about to pull a power of attorney play. Classic elder grab. Seen it 100 times. What do I do? First, we document everything. Your medical records, your business performance, your daily routine. We build a fortress of competency that no judge can ignore. Second, we wait. Wait for what? For Vince to make his move. Right now, you have suspicion and some camera footage of them measuring your rooms. That's uncomfortable, but it's not illegal. We need him to actually file something. Then we hit back with everything. And if he forges documents, then he goes to jail." Ray paused. "Frank, how far do you think your son will go?" I thought about the tape measure in my living room, the photos Kristen took, the way Vince talked about spring buyers like he was selling a stock. "All the way," I said. I was right. Friday, March 7th, 2:20 p.m. I came home from work and found an envelope on my kitchen counter. It hadn't been mailed. Someone had placed it there. Inside was a durable power of attorney document, 8 pages, granting Vincent Moretti full authority over my financial and legal affairs. And at the bottom, on the signature line, was my name, written in handwriting that looked almost like mine. Almost. My son had forged my signature. I sat at my kitchen table for 10 minutes, staring at that document. The boy I'd carried on my shoulders at the 4th of July. The kid I'd coached in Little League. The young man I'd toasted at his wedding. He'd broken into my house and forged my name to steal everything I'd built. I picked up the phone and called Ray. He picked up on the first ring, like he'd been waiting. "He did it," I said. "The POA? Forged. My signature, but not my handwriting. He must have practiced, but he got the capital F wrong. I've been signing documents for 40 years. I know my own hand. Don't touch it. I'm sending someone to photograph it in place." Then we call the police. "Not yet," I said. "Frank, Ray, I want to know everything. Who he's talked to, what he's planning. I want him to think he's winning until the moment he isn't." Ray was quiet for 5 seconds. "You sound like your father. My father was a bricklayer who built half the churches in Newark. He taught me one thing that mattered. Let the other man swing first, then don't miss." Over the next 4 days, I became a detective in my own life. I checked my camera footage every night and made copies of everything to a USB drive I kept in my truck. Saturday, March 8th. Vince and Kristen came by again while I was supposedly at the gym. I was actually parked down the block in my truck, watching the camera feed on my phone. They brought a woman with them. Blonde, pantsuit, leather portfolio. A realtor. The three of them walked through every room. The realtor made notes. Kristen pointed out what she wanted to change. Vince talked numbers. The realtor said she could have the listing up by next Wednesday. On my camera, clear as day, Vince said something that I will never forget as long as I live. "The old man doesn't even know what day it is half the time. Once we get him into Sunrise Gardens, this place is ours. We just need the POA registered, and we're golden." Kristen laughed. "Can you imagine him in assisted living? He'll probably try to fix their plumbing." They all laughed. My son, his wife, and a stranger, laughing about throwing me away. The realtor asked, "And he's agreed to this?" Vince smiled. "He doesn't need to agree. I have power of attorney." The forged power of attorney. My son was planning to use a fraudulent document to sell my house out from under me. That wasn't just betrayal. That was a felony. I saved every second of that footage. Monday, March 10th. I went to Dr. Richard Palmieri, my physician for 15 years, and requested a full cognitive evaluation. Not because I needed one, because I needed it on paper. Dr. Palmieri ran every test. Montreal Cognitive Assessment scored 30 out of 30. Perfect. Mini Mental State Exam, 30 out of 30. Perfect. Blood pressure 124/78. Cholesterol normal. Stress test normal. He wrote a detailed letter stating that Frank Moretti shows no signs of cognitive decline and is fully competent to manage his personal, financial, and legal affairs. While I was at the doctor's office, I got a text from Diane. "Your son just called again. Asked if there have been any workplace accidents or complaints about your judgment." I told him no. He asked if you'd forgotten any appointments recently. I told him you haven't missed a day in 3 years. That evening, I called my business partners, Tony Russo, who'd been with me since 1991, and Mike Sheehan, who joined in 2003. Both confirmed that Vince had contacted them in the past week, asking about my mental state and hinting that he might need to take over business operations. Tony's exact words on the phone were, "Frankie, your kid called me asking if you've gone soft in the head. I told him you outwork every 30-year-old on our crew. Then I told him not to call me again." Tuesday, March 11th. Ray and I met at his office above the pizzeria. He spread everything out on his desk. The forged POA, the camera footage, statements from my doctor, office manager, and business partners. The realtor's visit. Vince's calls to everyone in my life. "Frank," Ray said, "this is airtight. Forgery. Fraud. Attempted elder financial abuse. We can file criminal charges right now." "Not yet. Frank, every day you wait is a day he could file that POA with the county and start selling your assets. He won't file it until Wednesday. That's when the realtor said she'd have the listing ready. Vince is a planner. He'll want everything lined up at once, and you want to catch him in the act. I want him to walk into the county clerk's office with a forged document and hand it to a clerk while a detective is standing 10 feet away." Ray stared at me. You really are your father's son. Wednesday, March 12th, 9:15 a.m. Detective Margaret Kowalski, of the Essex County Prosecutor's Office, Elder Abuse Division, was waiting in the lobby of the county clerk's office. She'd reviewed our evidence the day before and agreed that a forged POA filing would constitute the criminal act we needed. I was parked across the street in my truck, watching the front entrance. At 9:47 a.m., Vince's silver BMW pulled into the parking lot. He got out wearing his best suit, carrying a manila folder. He walked in like he owned the world. 12 minutes later, he walked out in handcuffs. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I felt something worse. I felt nothing. Like the part of me that loved my son had been cauterized, and all that was left was scar tissue. Ray called me at 10:30. He's been booked. Forgery in the second degree. Attempted fraud. Elder financial abuse. Bail hearing this afternoon. And Kristen? She's at your house right now. Showed up with a moving van 20 minutes ago. Your neighbor Mrs. Caputo called me. A moving van. They were so confident they'd started packing my things before Vince even filed the paperwork. I drove home. Sure enough, a U-Haul was parked in my driveway. Kristen was directing two movers carrying boxes out of my garage. My boxes. My tools. Gloria's china set that had been in her family for 3 generations. I pulled into my driveway and blocked the U-Haul. Kristen saw me and froze. Frank, you're supposed to be at work. I am at work. This is my house. What are you doing? Vince said you'd agreed to move. We're just getting things organized. Vince is in a holding cell at the Essex County Jail right now. Her face went white. What? He tried to file a forged power of attorney. Got arrested in the clerk's office. Kristen's mouth opened and closed. That's not. He said you signed it. He forged my signature. Kristen. And you know he did. Because you were in this house when the realtor came through. Saturday afternoon. I have you on camera. She took a step back. You have cameras? 4 outside. 2 inside. Cloud storage. Every visit, every conversation, every measurement you took with your tape measure. The comment about mothballs and sadness. The joke about me fixing the plumbing at assisted living. All of it. Kristen started crying. Not from remorse. From panic. Frank, please. We can work this out. Vince just wanted to help. Help himself to my house. It's not like that. We have financial pressures. The mortgage on our place, the car payments, the kids' school tuition. Your financial pressures are not my emergency, Kristen. I pointed at the U-Haul. Put everything back. Now. The movers looked at each other, shrugged, and started carrying the boxes back in. They didn't care whose side they were on. They were getting paid by the hour. Kristen stood in my driveway crying while strangers returned my life to its shelves. Part of me wanted to comfort her. A very small part. Thursday, March 13th. Vince's bail hearing. The courtroom was standing room only because Ray, God bless him, had mentioned the case to a reporter friend at the Star-Ledger. Human interest story. Local businessman catches his own son trying to steal his house using forged documents and hidden cameras. The reporter ran it online that morning. By noon, it had 40,000 views. Vince's attorney, a young guy from his firm's legal connections, argued for release on his own recognizance. Good family man. No prior record. Misunderstanding about the documents. Judge Patricia Hoffman wasn't having it. She'd reviewed the camera footage. Mr. Moretti, she said, looking at Vince. You forged your father's signature on a legal document and attempted to file it with this county. You brought a realtor into his home without his knowledge. You contacted his physician, his employees, and his business partners in an apparent campaign to establish false evidence of cognitive decline. Is there anything you'd like to say? Vince stood. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. Your Honor, I was acting out of genuine concern for my father's well-being. I may have gone about it the wrong way. The wrong way. My son still couldn't admit what he'd done. Judge Hoffman set bail at $50,000. Vince's firm posted it within the hour. He was out by 3 p.m. He didn't call me. But the damage was already spreading. By Friday, Vince's employer, a wealth management firm that ran on trust and reputation, had placed him on indefinite suspension pending investigation. 3 of his biggest clients pulled their accounts. The Star Ledger article had been picked up by NJ.com, and the comments section was merciless. Saturday morning, March 15th. My doorbell rang at 7 a.m. I opened it to find Vince standing on my porch. No suit, jeans and a wrinkled polo. He looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He walked into the house he'd been planning to sell and sat at the kitchen table where he'd eaten cereal as a kid. "Dad, I don't know where to start." I sat across from him. "Try the truth. It's a new experience for you." He flinched. "I deserve that. You deserve worse." Silence. Long silence. The clock on the wall ticked. Gloria's clock. The one she'd bought at a flea market in 1992 because she said it reminded her of her grandmother's kitchen. Vince stared at the clock. "Mom loved that clock." "She did." His eyes were wet. "Dad, I'm losing everything. My job, my reputation, maybe my license. Kristen's talking about separating. She says I've humiliated her family." "You humiliated yourself, Vince." He put his head in his hands. I know I did. I don't know how I got here. When did I become this person?" I looked at my son. Really looked at him, the way I used to when he was small and had done something wrong and didn't understand why. "You became this person when you started measuring your life against Kristen's family," I said. "When you decided that what you had wasn't enough. When you stopped seeing me as your father and started seeing me as an ATM with an expiration date." He wiped his face. "That's not fair. What's not fair is forging your father's signature. What's not fair is laughing about me with a realtor in my own living room. What's not fair is calling my office manager to ask if I've lost my mind, when you're the one who's lost his soul." Vince was quiet for a long time. "What happens now?" "Now you face consequences." "I'm not dropping the charges." "Vince." "Dad, please." Your career was built on trust. You violated the most basic trust that exists. If you can forge your father's signature, what would you do with a client's money?" He had no answer for that. "I'm keeping my house," I said. "I'm keeping my business. I'm keeping every penny I earned with these hands. And you're going to stand in front of a judge and explain what you did and accept whatever comes. And after that, we'll see. I'm not closing the door, Vince, but I'm not opening it either. You broke something that doesn't glue back together overnight." He nodded, stood up, walked to the front door, stopped. "Dad, the house looks good. You keep it up better than anyone I know." "I always have." He left. I sat at the kitchen table for another hour, drinking coffee, looking at Gloria's clock. The house was quiet, but it was mine. Every board, every pipe, every memory on the wall, mine. The criminal case took 4 months. Vince pleaded guilty to forgery and attempted fraud. The elder abuse charge was reduced as part of the plea deal. He got 3 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and a mandatory ethics review by the State Financial Licensing Board. His firm let him go permanently. Kristen filed for separation in June. Ray handled the civil side. We got a restraining order preventing Vince or Kristen from entering my property without written permission. I updated my will, my trusts, and every document that mattered. Ray added a clause that specifically disinherited Vince, with a note that read, "Inheritance is earned through character, not entitlement." I also installed 2 more cameras. Can never be too careful. September that year, I turned 68. Tony and Mike threw me a party at the shop. 38 employees, plus their families. Diane baked a cake shaped like a pipe wrench. Dr. Palmieri came. Mrs. Caputo from next door came. Even Detective Kowalski stopped by, off duty, to say happy birthday. I stood in the middle of my shop, surrounded by people who'd worked beside me for decades, and I thought about what Kristen had said, that I was a man who unclogged toilets for a living. She was right. I was. And I'd built a life that no one could forge, steal, or sell out from under me. Vince didn't come to the party, but he sent a card, handwritten, which meant something, because he hadn't handwritten anything since grade school. It said, "Happy birthday, Dad. I'm working on being someone you'd be proud of. I know it'll take time. I'm not going anywhere." I put the card on the mantel, next to Gloria's clock. Maybe someday I'll invite him back to this table. Maybe someday we'll eat burgers and talk about nothing, the way fathers and sons are supposed to. But that's his bridge to build, not mine. I already built mine. It's called Moretti Plumbing and HVAC, and it's been standing for 41 years. If you want to steal from me, you'd better bring more than a forged signature and a tape measure, because the old plumber's still got a few tricks left in his toolbox. And the cameras are always rolling.